Hello, my name is Bennie Thompson, and I proudly represent the 2nd Congressional District of Mississippi. Today, I have the pleasure to deliver this week's Congressional Black Caucus message to America about the importance of voting rights. In an election year, voting and voting rights are front and center in American society. In 2016, Americans will go to the polls to elect their chosen representatives in races ranging from county election commissioners to the President of the United States. These elections will have far-reaching impacts on everything in people's lives, whether it's your garbage being picked up on time or whether or not your children will have a safe and economically sound future. The Congressional Black Caucus is absolutely committed to making sure that every election is fair and is free of barriers that prevent people from exercising their right to vote. To that end, the Congressional Black Caucus will work diligently to restore Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act and to end all discriminatory voting practices. The passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act has allowed millions of minorities the constitutional right to vote in federal elections. In 1964, only 300 African Americans in the United States were elected to public office. This included just 3 in Congress. Now, there are more than 10,000 black elected officials, including 45 members of the Congressional Black Caucus. But all of that progress was put at risk when, in 2013, the United States Supreme Court turned back the clock, despite unprecedented evidence of continued discrimination, and ruled that Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act was unconstitutional in the Shelby versus Holder case, and thereby nullified the pre-clearance process under Section 5 of that act. In my own state, Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act was a godsend. It protected black Mississippians' right to vote and gave a mechanism to fighting back when someone's right was abridged. And frankly, without Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, I probably would not be sitting here today as a member of Congress. Mississippi and the South has a long history, a horrible history of suppressing and nullifying the black vote. Going back to the time of Jim Crow, with poll taxes and literacy tests, and coming all the way up to present day when Mississippi and other southern states once again created discriminatory voter identification laws within hours of the Supreme Court striking down the pre-clearance requirement for Section 5. My state, Mississippi, has been the poster child for why these protections are so necessary. That's why the efforts of the CBC to restore all the powers of the Voting Rights Act are so important. Members of the Congressional Black Caucus have been on the front line of this fight and have been very instrumental in starting the Voting Rights Caucus to advocate for those very important reforms. Currently, there are 2 bipartisan legislative proposals sponsored and co-sponsored by members of the CBC to fix the Voting Rights Act, which are awaiting congressional consideration. The failure of Republican leadership has allowed these bills to languish even in the face of the first national election in 50 years scheduled to take place without the protection of the Voting Rights Act. The Congressional Black Caucus is always going to be the leading voice, not only for election fairness, but also for voter participation efforts. In 2008 and 2012, black voters and young voters turned out in record numbers to elect and re-elect the nation's first black president. It is vitally important that voters in the black community maintain the same level of voter participation going forward. It could very well be the difference in an election and be the deciding factor on whether or not this country will go forward with progressive ideas shared by members of the Congressional Black Caucus, or go back into an era of hatred and bigotry. Elections have consequences, and the elections of 2016 probably have greater consequences than any other time in our history. Our right to vote in this country did not come easy, and many lives were lost in the fight to win the vote. The Congressional Black Caucus will continue to do its part to preserve the legacy of those lives by pressing for legislation to protect the vote, and we will also continue to urge voters to let their voices be heard at the ballot box. Many have tried to shut down our voices with violence, intimidation, and unjust laws for decades. Let's not let apathy and a lack of interest be the thing that finally quiets all of us in a community and prevents us from continuing to make history in this country. Keep the faith and vote your conscience. Thank you.